Inshallah, I would like now to introduce our speaker for today's session, Brother Ejaz Muhammad. Brother Ejaz is a back-end engineer currently working at Cisco with a strong interest in geopolitics and the study of social and political dynamics. He is also a returning speaker at mine, having previously presented a session titled How Social Habits Create Movements, where he examined how patterns of behavior and structural conditions contribute to broader social change. His work aligns with mine's emphasis on examining complex issues through a system-oriented and analytical lens. Today, inshallah, he'll be speaking on the topic of Bosnia War, geopolitics, ethnic nationalism, and the collapse of order. In this presentation, Brother Ejaz will examine a range of historical, political, and geopolitical factors associated with the conflict in Bosnia during the 1990s. The discussion will focus on how ethnic nationalism, regional power dynamics, and international responses interacted during this period, with the goal of better understanding the conditions under which social and political order can deteriorate. With that, inshallah, I'll invite Brother Ejaz to begin.
Thank you, Brother Raza. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So today we'll go through the Bosnia War, what caused it, and what were the geopolitics that caused the war, and how it ended. So let's get right into it. Just 1 minute. I'm not able to change the slide. Okay. Can you see the second slide now?
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so before we get into the Bosnia War, let's try to understand where they come in the map. The Balkans, this is where the Slavs are located. So the Balkans area, if you look in the map, it's the east of Europe or Eastern Europe, which is basically between between Italy and Turkey. And above you have Austria, Hungary, and Ukraine. So this area that you see is where the Balkans is. Okay. Now this is the current map. Now here you can see. Here you can see the country Slovenia towards the left, then Croatia, Bosnia. Their full name is Bosnia and Herzegovina, but we'll refer to it as Bosnia. And then you have Serbia, Montenegro, Kosovo, and Macedonia. So this is our area of interest, all these countries. So moving forward, we'll see how these maps changed and what were the geopolitics. Next slide. Going to the history before we get to the war. So this is the map from the 13th century. So here you can see almost most of the countries there. Serbia is much bigger here, and it has all the other countries like Montenegro, Kosovo, and Macedonia was part of Serbia. Other than that, you have Bosnia and Croatia here. Now, in 13th century, if you come to Bosnia, Bosnians were all of one ethnicity. Like they spoke the same language, they had the same culture, and the same ancestry. In fact, all of the Slavs, as they are called, the South Slavs, they all had almost very similar language, culture, and ancestry. Now coming to Bosnia, the only difference between the people there were three different people, and the only difference was the church that they followed. They had the Bosnian church, which was the local church, and then they had the Eastern Orthodox Church, which was the Byzantine, and the Roman Catholic Church. And the Bosnian church was considered heretic by the other two established churches. Now, coming to 14th and 18th century, we had the Ottomans occupying the and most of the Balkans. As you can see, except Croatia or some parts of Croatia, most of it was occupied by them. And this went on for about 400 years. So in this time frame, many Bosnians, especially the people who followed the Bosnian church, converted to Islam, because the Bosnian church was already persecuted or considered heretic by the other two, and under Ottoman they found Islam to be a much better option. They were not persecuted, and they also had some tax benefits under Ottomans. So most of the people who followed the Bosnian church converted to Islam. Others stayed Christian, but the ethnicity was still the same. There were no new people who came in, or like there were no Ottomans or Turks who came into Bosnia. It was the same people, just that some of them converted to Islam. Now coming to 19th century, 19th century they had this so 19th century started having this national movements coming up in Europe, and all the Slavs came together and formed this Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia meant the land of the Slavs. So there were a couple of empires with the same name. There was an empire of Yugoslavia, and then there was Yugoslavia, and then there was the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. But basically, this was one country that included all the Slavs. And as you can see, this Yugoslavia included all the countries that I mentioned in the second slide or the first slide, right? Which include Bosnia, Croatia, Macedonia, Montenegro, and Serbia. Okay, now a point to note here is that the Serbs dominated Yugoslavia. The capital of Yugoslavia was Belgrade. That was a majority Serb area. So Serb was the majority in the army, in the administration. They mostly dominated Yugoslavia, or the government of Yugoslavia. And in 1945 to 1992, you had the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, which was a pure communist regime. This was ruled by Josip Broz Tito. He had acknowledged that there were like ethnic tensions between the different people, like between the Croats and the Macedonians. So he divided them into 6 different republics, or moreover more like us states. But then he ruled with a big iron fist, and he suppressed the ethnicity. He also suppressed the religion. So our well-respected Islamic thinker Alija Izetbegovic, right? He was jailed twice under this rule. It was under Tito that first he was jailed at around 21 years something for running a group called Muslim Youths or something, and then later for writing the famous article, the Declaration of Islamic Declaration. But Tito had everything controlled centrally or the federally. The army was very neutral. It was not biased towards any ethnicity, and the economy was centrally controlled. And he did not allow any kinds of ethnicity or religion to be spread or to be practiced. Now in 1991, Yugoslavia starts breaking up. There were economic collapse. Communism as an idea was collapsing in Europe, and there was nationalist sentiments all over the Europe. People were going back to their or bringing up their ethnicity and the nationalism. Politicians were using this to rile up the people and to rile up the support, the nationalism and ethnic sentiments. And seeing that Yugoslavia is breaking up, the different six republics that Yugoslavia had, most of them started declaring independence. So initially, Slovenia, Croatia, and Macedonia, they declared independence. As I said before, Serb were the dominant in Yugoslavia, and Serbs did not want the Yugoslavia to break up because they were in power, and the others did not want to be part of Yugoslavia because they felt like they were controlled by the Serbs and they wanted their own autonomy. But the other side, Serbs wanted to keep everything. So Serbia and Montenegro, which was dominated by Serbs, uh, kept themselves as Yugoslavia. They named it as a Federation of Yugoslavia, I guess. So they continued as Yugoslavia. And in this time frame, Bosnia also uh, wanted to gain independence from Yugoslavia. Let's see the ethnicity of Bosnia around this time in 1991 when Yugoslavia was breaking up. Bosniaks or Muslims, these are the Bosnians who converted to Islam during the Ottoman times. They were the majority, 43%. Then we had Serbs, 31, and Croats, 17. Now, how did you get Serbs and Croats when in 13th century there was only Bosnians? So the way the ethnicity changed is this. So the Bosnians who went, so the Serbs were following the Orthodox Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, and the Croats were following the Roman Catholic Church. So the Bosnians who were going to the Orthodox Church over a period of time from 13th to 19th century, over a period of time, the church and the schools that they went to, they started preaching that you as an Orthodox, you are actually Serbs. You belong to the Serb ethnicity and you should be looking up to Serbia. So the Bosnians who went to Orthodox Church started identifying themselves as Serbs. And similarly, the Bosnians who went to the Catholic Church started identifying themselves as Croats. They were looking to Croatia for leadership. So this is how the same Bosnian people who were of the same ethnicity became three different ethnicity, which is actually not an ethnicity based on ancestry, but it is more of an artificial ethnicity that the Serbs and the Croats created for their political purpose. So Bosnia in 1991 held a referendum for independence. They held a vote on who wants as a referendum, like to see the support from the people, whether they want to be part of Yugoslavia or not. So mostly the Bosniaks and most Croats voted for independence, and most of the Serbs boycotted it because the Serbs wanted to be part of Yugoslavia, which was already dominated by Serbs. They didn't want to be under a different country which would be dominated by Muslims. So the referendum was very positive. Around 95, more than 95% voted for yes, and Bosnia chose to be independent from Yugoslavia. Around this time, Serbs had already started their propaganda. So Bosnia was actually a truly multicultural society. In all the towns, villages, and cities, you had all these three people, all three ethnicities living together. They were married to each other. They were like neighbors. They were all living together, like inseparable. But the Serbian media, they started this propaganda. They started playing the World War II massacres endlessly on their TV channels. They claim that Muslims are actually the Ottoman occupiers who occupied and enslaved us for 400 years. They claim that genocide against Serbs was imminent. If Muslims come to power or the Bosnia comes as a Muslim majority country, then the Serbs will be under threat. Some of the violent propaganda they used against Muslims, Bosnia is becoming an Islamic state that will oppress Christians. Bosniaks are not real Slavs, they are Turks who conquered us. So again, this was their manufactured propaganda that these are not Slavs, but these are Ottoman Turks who came and settled here and have conquered us. We were oppressed by Muslims. Bosnia is becoming an Iranian-style Islamic republic. We must kill them before they kill us. Trying to connect this to what we see, the propaganda that we see in the world now, whether it's in India or whether it's in US or in Middle East. The far right nationalists always use this as a weapon to rile up the public, to get the support of the majority, right? And people in India, they would have heard that Hindu khatre mein hai. Hindus are in danger, right? So very similar, they use the very similar agenda then, very similar idea. Every nationalism or every nationalistic fascist starts with this propaganda against the other group. Okay, so the Serbs boycotted the referendum. Alija Izetbegovic was the elected leader of this time. There was already a free election after the Yugoslavia fell, and Alija Izetbegovic was the leader. And he decided that he will go ahead with the referendum, and Bosnia will be independent. But the Serbs said they will not accept a Turkish rule, implying that since Alija is Muslim, he's of Turk origin, and we will not live under a Turk. So they declared independence from Bosnia and formed what they call Republika Srpska. So if you see this map here, the area shown in orange is Serbia, and the one in yellow is Montenegro, and these two form the Yugoslavia of this time. Okay, all the others were independent, and these two were the remnants of Yugoslavia, and they call themselves as Federation of Yugoslavia or something like that. And then the area in blue is what the Bosnia is, and within Bosnia you see this area shaded with red. This is the place where Serbs were in majority, not really majority, but mostly the Serbs were there, and the Serbs declared themselves as a different state called the Republika Srpska. And this is the area that they claimed is theirs. Now, no one recognized this state. Neither the UN or any of the country recognized the state except the Serbian leader Slobodan Milosevic. So this guy was the far-right nationalist leader of Yugoslavia, which was only Serbia and Montenegro at this time. Serbian military offense. Now Milosevic wanted a Serbian state controlling all the Serbs in the Balkans. So this required an area from Bosnia, parts of Croatia, and also Kosovo. Kosovo was another Muslim-dominated state where they had Albanian Muslims, but all these areas had some population of Serbs as well. So Milosevic wanted all this area to be part of his greater Serbian state, which he called Yugoslavia. So as I mentioned before, Serbia had the capital Belgrade, which was the capital of Yugoslavia, and Serbs had a greater control in the administration and the army. So the army was mostly Serbian, and now Milosevic controlled the entire army and the weapons, everything. And at this time, Yugoslavia was said to have the fourth largest army by numbers, actually. The army men, fourth largest in the world. So all this was at his disposal. So Milosevic sent his army, going back to the previous slide, Milosevic sent his army to this to support the Serbians in the Republika Srpska, and the Serbs in this region used the weapons and the tanks and whatever they could get from Serbia, and they started the war, and they started acquiring more and more land as they can. And since these parts where the Serbs were living were not entirely Serbian, but they also had Muslims and the Croats, and mostly Muslims, they had to ethnically cleanse these areas from the other two communities. That was the only way they could have these as a Serbian territory, right? So this started mass executions of men, raping of women, concentration camps, forced expulsions, destruction of mosques, and anything that looked Islamic, so that the town or the city that they took over should not look like it was ever a Muslim or a Muslim town or a Muslim city. So while the Serbs had all the military equipments from the Serbia, Bosniaks and Croats had only their hunting rifles to defend themselves. So the scale of destruction cost around 610 mosques were destroyed during this war. The idea was to erase the Muslim culture and the religious presence so that it would look like there was no Islam at all in this region, and it was completely Serb. It's estimated that around 20,000 to 50,000 Muslim women were raped. The idea was that we will destroy the Muslim bloodlines. The these Serbs were filled with so much hatred that they did not want the Muslim bloodlines to continue. And they told the Muslim women that you will give birth to Serbian children now. Around 68,000 Muslims were killed, and more than 2 million were displaced from their homes because they were all sent out or displaced from their hometowns to the area out of the Republika Srpska, which the Serbs captured. The siege of Sarajevo. Now the aim of Serbia was to seize the Sarajevo, which was the capital of Bosnia. And Sarajevo was a symbol of coexistence. It had truly multi-ethnic culture and people intermarried. It was truly secular. And capturing the Sarajevo meant capturing the or destroying the idea of Bosnia itself, because that was Bosnia all about, multiculturalism and coexistence. So capturing of Sarajevo was very similar to what we experienced in or we saw on Gaza recently. They had cut the electricity and the water lines. They had destroyed all the hospitals, and around 11,000 civilians were killed. All the civilian, there were snipers killing the civilians, anyone who came out to the city or to the street. There were snipers placed on the high mountains or on the building tops, and they would just randomly fire at the civilians. So up till now, until 1993, both the Bosniaks, the Muslims, and the Croats were fighting together and defending Bosnia from Serbs. Now in 1993, Croatian President Franjo Tudman, he wanted to have Bosnia to be partitioned. So he and Serbia's leader Milosevic secretly discussed dividing Bosnia between them, between Croatia and Serbia. Now take the Croatian majority area for Croat majority area for Croatia and the Serb majority for Serbia. So Croats with support from Croatia turned against the Muslims. They started fighting. They also started fighting Muslims. Now Bosniaks or the Muslims, no, they didn't want to lose half the country again. I mean, they already lost the half the country to Serbs. Now whatever was left, they didn't want to lose that also again. So they started defending. They were fighting Croats at one end and Serbs at the other end. And in order to create a Croat territory now, Croats also had to do the same thing what Serbians did. They had to ethnically cleanse the Muslims from those areas. So they also started mass murder, detention camps, and destruction of mosques. So what was the international response? Pretty much like what we have experienced during the 2 years of Palestinian genocide. US, UK, and France framed the conflict as ancient ethnic hatred in the Balkans. They say it's more like a civil war between them. It's an internal matter. We shouldn't be bothered. They avoided legal obligations to defend Bosnia. They justified saying that this is a civil war, right? Just like how we have been hearing this recently that Israel has the right to defend itself. So they found excuses to stay away from it because they were not interested. UN passed an arms embargo on Yugoslavia. Basically, they restricted the sales of arms to Yugoslavia or the passing of arms to Yugoslavia from outside. But this actually helped the Serbs because Serbs already had the weapons from Yugoslavia, and it was the Bosniaks who did not. Bosniaks who did not have the weapons. And not allowing the weapons inside prevented the Bosniaks from defending themselves. And this only made the situation worse. Now the US wanted to lift the embargo, seeing this, but Britain and France refused. Britain and France were more concerned about the stability and not justice. So they had some peacekeepers on the ground as UN warriors or UN peacekeepers there. So they were worried that if they fought the Serbs, their soldiers will be killed or taken hostage. They also feared that it could be a long, messy war like Vietnam, and they accepted the Serb territorial gains as facts on the ground. Russia saw Serbs as a Slavic and Orthodox ally, very close to their ethnicity. So they blocked strong UN action. They threatened to veto any forceful or use of weapons. They limited the NATO or what UN could do in Bosnia. And also, Bosnia had no oil, no major trade routes, and no military bases. So there was nothing much interesting for the major powers to lose, or there was nothing much of their interest. If you recollect, during the uh, Gaza genocide, when the Houthis blocked the shipping lane, US and UK was very quick to send their planes and bomb them, right? Because that affected their trade route, that caused the things to be expensive in their countries. So, but here in Bosnia, there was nothing of interest to them. Like it did not matter to them. So they may mostly use diplomacy instead of using force. They were just into negotiation. They were not interested in using force. So Yugoslavia was cut off from trading. So there was sanctions put on Yugoslavia, and all the other countries were asked to not do any trading with Yugoslavia. A Bosnia-Croat alliance restored. So in 1994, US got involved again diplomatically, and they brokered a peace between Croats and the Bosniaks. Now again they reunited and they again started fighting the Serbs together. Now at this time, or by this time, Yugoslavia's economy was plunging because of the sanctions, right? And Milosevic also started pulling the army back because he didn't want to keep supporting the Serbs as the economy was in peril in his own country, and he was not able to manage the economy there. So he started pulling the army back. The UN, see, UN had also established multiple safe zones during the war. There were actually 6 in Srebrenica, Sarajevo, and the other 4 places. And these safe zone was not adequately armed actually. There were like very few soldiers there as peacekeepers, and they had no heavy weapons, no tanks, and they also did not have the authority to use weapon or force except in self-defense. They couldn't just go on the offensive and attack Serbs. Now the Bosnians who were fleeing the ethnic cleansing or fleeing their villages and towns when they were attacked, they had to give up their weapons to enter the UN safe zones. So UN safe zone is supposed to be protected by UN. So the Bosniaks were supposed to lay down their weapons and then enter the zone. But the Serbs who were following them, they had their weapons and they had their weapons. So this kind of turned the safe zones into an open air prison that Srebrenica genocide. On July 11th, 1995, around 2,000 Serbs led by Ratko Mladic, they marched to Srebrenica, which was one of the UN safe zone where only the Muslims were there. They followed Muslims there, or they marched to this. And as I said before, Muslims had no weapons because they were asked to lay down their arms if they had to enter the UN safe zone. And the UN soldiers there were only 350, and they did not have enough arms to protect. And knowing that the Serbs or the Serb army was coming for the Muslims and not against them, they didn't resist much. They gave up soon, or they tried to play mostly neutral. So the Serbs entered, they separated the men and boys. They took them to a different nearby place, and they executed 8,000 men within few days, in like 2-3 days. They lined up all of them, executed them, fired at them, and they buried all of them in mass graves. This was the worst atrocity that the Europe had seen since the World War II. This is actually a snapshot from the video where Mladic is asking the men to move to a different area and asking the women to stay back. So this genocide was a moral and political shock. Is someone trying to speak? Okay. This genocide was a shock to Europe and to the world. Now, this Srebrenica genocide proved that UN safe zones were meaningless, they were not safe, and that there was genocide happening, or genocide can happen in a UN safe zone. The credibility of the UN and NATO was collapsing. There was public outrage in US and Europe. This now forced the leaders to do something. Now the NATO got involved and started using force. They sent their planes and started bombing the Serb military and their military headquarters and their infrastructure. Croatia, the neighborly country Croatia, also launched and started supporting the Croats with their arms and weapons. Bosnian forces finally advanced because now the Serbian military was crippling, and Bosnians were now making ready to make advances into the Serbian territory. Serbs were finally facing defeat. Now this is when US came out for a peace treaty. It was called the Dayton Peace Accords. The peace treaty, what the peace treaty, uh, the agreement in the peace treaty was that Bosnia will continue to be one country. Meaning it will not be divided as a separate country for Serbs and Bosniaks, but it will be one country. But then there will be two self-governing entities inside it called the Federation for the Bosniaks and Croats and the Republika Srpska for the Serbs. Now Alija Izetbegovic, who was the leader of Bosnia at this time, he he had to think a lot whether he should go with this peace or he should continue fighting. And this is the term he used for the decision that he made. That this is an unjust peace, but it is better than a just war. So he was fighting a just war against the ethnic cleansing and against the capture of the Muslim territory by the Serbs, but continuing the war, and they were making progress actually. The Serbs were losing their ground and they were making progress, but continuing the war meant that there would be more bloodshed, more killing, and ending it would mean that it was unjust for the Muslims and it was favoring the or rewarding for the ethnic cleansing or the rewarding for the Serbs, but then that was the quickest way to get peace. So he said that an unjust peace is better than a just war for this moment. So this is how the war came to an end. Okay, now the Bosnian Muslims today, Bosnian Muslims are rebuilding the destroyed mosques and their culture. There were 28 mosques destroyed in Srebrenica. It was told that the mosques were destroyed even to the foundation. Even there was not even a brick left. Like they wanted to completely erase the Muslim identity. 24 out of 25, 28 has been already rebuilt. Bosnians are now more religious and practicing now than they were before. Obviously, they have been inspired by their leader. Most of you would have read his articles or books. He has been preaching how to be a proud Muslim and how to stick to your values at the same time living in the West or in Europe. So previously, under the communist Yugoslavia, Muslims were mostly secular, not that religious, but now they are much more religious and more asserting of their Islamic identity. Islamic studies are flourishing now in Bosnia. There are multiple madrasas and maktabs coming up. But even now, there's still political tensions between the Serbs and the Bosnians. They are still very ethnically clustered areas. Serbs live in their area and Muslims live in their area. They go to separate schools, separate organizations, separate restaurants. Almost everything is separate. Summary of what you have seen now. The Bosniaks were actually of one ethnicity. They were divided only by the religious belief or the church they followed. Under the Ottoman rule, many embraced Islam. Most of them, around 40%, embraced Islam. But by 19th century, Orthodox started identifying themselves as Serbs and Catholics started identifying themselves as Croats, and Muslims under their propaganda were termed as Turks or outsiders or occupiers. After the fall of Yugoslavia, Serbs opposed a Muslim majority state. Then they started an ethnic cleansing of Muslims and Croats by Serbs. And then the Croats also started ethnic cleansing of Muslims from their area. Srebrenica genocide, UN and NATO finally started getting involved with force. Dayton peace accords, Bosnia, one country, but divided into two self-governing entities. To sum up the lessons, or the lesson that we Muslims need to learn from this, and especially seeing another genocide in the last 2 years, UN and the West and all these values that they talk about, they are not for us. They may not apply for us. They may not apply to Muslims. They are not going to come to our rescue. If we need to defend ourselves, we need to have the political power, the economic power, and the influence. Without this, nobody is going to come to our rescue. You could even see the Arab Muslim countries, their attitude towards the Palestinians. If this is how they're going to behave with the fellow Arab Palestinians, you can imagine what could happen if there were to be a genocide happen in India or the Muslims in India, right? So you cannot count on anything, any organization or any country for that matter. The only way out is Muslims. You need to have your own, you need to build your own power. You need to be having, you need to have the political power, the economic power, and the influence to control the narrative, right? Okay, so this is pretty much what I had to cover.
Jazakallah, brother Ijaz. This was an excellent presentation for a sensitive topic, and